allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Office is requesting the board approve and execute the minutes for the meeting of June 23rd, 2015.
Make that motion.
Second.
Commissioner Rea?
Aye.
Aye.
Commissioner's office is requesting the board approve and execute the minutes for the meeting of June 25th, 2015.
Make that motion.
Second.
Commissioner Rea?
Aye.
Commissioner Spillier?
Aye.
Commissioner Claypool?
I think the auditor had a last-minute addition on the financials, so that's why Heidi's not here yet. Where's Jessica?
She was here.
Yes.
I bet she's still talking to Kathy.
Here she is.
There she is. We're not gonna mark you tardy. Board can't speak to the entire board on that.
That's okay, you can mark me down. So we have two things on the agenda today. Natalie Dolezal, she has been with us for 2 years. She started out as the assistant site coordinator at West Geauga and then transferred to our main site as ancillary programs coordinator. So she has shown some great leadership and she wanted to go back to her recreational roots. She has a 4-year degree in recreation. So she did apply for our site coordinator job, and we think she'd be a great fit for the position out at Sugar Falls Park.
The Department on Aging is requesting the board approve the promotion of Natalie Dolezal to the position of full-time site coordinator number 1004 to be effective August 3rd, 2015 at a rate of $18.03 per hour. After the successful completion of a 180-day probationary period, the rate will increase to $18.97 per hour.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Commissioner Rea?
Aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Claypool?
Aye.
And we do have a position opening, so we would like to post the position of full-time information and referral assistant.
Department on Aging is requesting the board grant permission to advertise for the position of full-time information and referral assistant number 1017. This position will remain posted until filled.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Commissioner Rea?
Aye.
Commissioner Spillier?
Aye.
Commissioner Claypool?
Aye.
Thank you.
And Jessica.
Thank you, Jesse.
Heidi, you're up.
Okay. Okay. Financials today include a revenue certification for the Community and Economic Development Fund, appropriation transfer from the contingency fund for municipal court drug testing expenses that are offset by the reduction to the annual funding for Lake Geauga Recovery Centers, supplemental appropriations for the transfer of unused project funds to the Water Resources County Sewer Improvement Fund, contract for business smarts for the replacement of 2 document imaging servers for the Department of Job and Family Services in the amount of $26,000, 1 then and now for the prosecutor's office, travel request for the commissioner's office, payments for 2015 funding for the Geauga County Historical Society, the Lake Geauga Recovery Centers, and Destination Geauga, payment to Crucera International for aerial mapping for the Chardon Township Henning Drive Sewer Project in the amount of $15,200, payment to Ravenwood Center for the third quarter 2015 funding for the Youth Center in the amount of $104,105, and the payment to Keystone U.S. Management for the purchase of closed circuit TV equipment for the Safety Center in the amount of $32,987.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Commissioner Rea?
Aye.
Commissioner Spillier?
Aye.
Commissioner Claypool?
Aye.
Thank you. We'll see you later.
Heidi, take a deep breath. Morning, Jody.
Morning.
Good, how are you?
John?
Okay, the first item is the contracts for the work that's going to be done at the Thompson Town Community Center. And if you recall, part of this funding was from an allocation grant from the state, and part of it was wage funds from program income. Okay, can you sign contracts?
The Office of Community and Economic Development is requiring the board approve and execute the contracts with Marks Building Company for the Thompson Township Community Center Rehabilitation Project in the amount of $234,338, $66,803 for Phase 1 under allocation grant DF 141AZ1, and $167,508 for Phase 2 and alternates under revolving loan fund waiver funds.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Commissioner Rea?
Aye.
Commissioner Spillier?
Aye.
Commissioner Claypool?
Aye. That's that one word right there,
Oh.
I think. Wish I had done with those alligator clips. Go to the next one?
If you recall, I had asked the commissioners for permission to extend the grant for the tie-ins for the Thompson Township sewer plant. So the state has responded, and all we need is your signature so that we can have an extension. Asking for 3 months.
The Office of Community and Economic Development is requesting the board approve and authorize the president of the board to execute the State of Ohio Small Cities Community Development Block Grant CDBG Residential Public Infrastructure Program Grant Agreement Extension Grant BW 131AZ1 for the Thompson Township Sewer Center Project, extending the date of completion from August 31st, 2015 to November 30th, 2015.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Commissioner Rea? Commissioner Spillier?
Aye.
Commissioner Claypool?
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Stay dry.
Yeah.
Is this Glenn?
This is Glenn. Morning.
How you doing, Clem?
Good, so,
Good, good.
Charlie.
it's early, but
It could get worse.
been running, I know, it's not been a good one. This is the lease agreement between the Geauga County Educational Service and the board yourself. Building 2, in the past, they've done Building 2 and Building 8, a section in Building 8. They don't want section, or the section in Building 8 anymore, so they're just going with Building 2. And this is what we came up with, I guess.
And that's got like a 3% adder in for each of the years, is that what?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
The Maintenance Department is requesting the board approve and execute the lease agreement between the Geauga County Educational Service Center and the Geauga County Board of Commissioners for the rental space located at 470 Center Street, Building Number 2, for the period July 1st, 2015 through June 30th, 2018, in the amount of $63,872.76 for the first year, 2015 through 2016, $65,904 for the second year, 2016 through 2017, and $67,816.20 for the third year, 2017 through 2018.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Commissioner Rea?
Aye.
Commissioner Spillier?
Aye.
Commissioner Claypool?
Number 9 is, what we're gonna do here is when we have the water line break, they're gonna dig out some of this, put 8 inches of reinforced concrete in there. It's called LSM, I wanna say. Let that sit for a day, 2, and then they're gonna take out off 1.5 inches from speed bump to speed bump, because we need to get the 3 culverts that we have in this area that raised up the asphalt. Then they're gonna pitch that again and then resurface from speed bump to speed bump out here, and that's gonna be $38,000.
Yeah, it's 38.4.
Correct.
The maintenance department is requesting the board approve and execute the service contract agreement with Repol Paving, Seal Coating, and Line Striping to perform asphalt grinding and repaving of 470 Center Street buildings, number 4, 5, and 6 parking lots for the year 2015 in amount not to exceed $38,400.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Rea?
Aye.
Commissioner Spillier?
Aye.
Commissioner Claypool?
Number 10 is, came to, I want to say last week, the hire Michael. Came back saying that he got another job at $9 an hour, so he's gonna take that job. This is just to resend it before he starts.
The maintenance department is requesting the board approve a motion from June 16th, 2015 that read approve hiring Michael Ware to the position of summer help number 0101 to be effective June 29th, 2015 through September 30, 2015, or the start of school, whichever comes first, at the rate of $8.25 per hour.
So moved.
Commissioner
Second.
Rea?
Aye.
Commissioner Spillier?
Aye.
Commissioner Claypool?
Yes.
Number 11 is John. He's been in the Newberry school system at the maintenance there for quite some time now, and we found out about this job, and then we interviewed him, and he seems like a very, very good candidate for the trades, senior trades mechanic.
The maintenance department is requesting the board approve hiring John A. Zenbo to the position of senior trades mechanic number 1905 to be effective July 13th, 2015, at a rate of $13.70 per hour. After the successful completion of a 180-day probationary period, the rate will increase to $14.42 per hour.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Rea?
Aye.
Commissioner Spillier?
Aye.
Commissioner Claypool?
One question for you, Glenn. On the paving out front here, what are you looking at as a timeline? When are they gonna start? When are they gonna finish? When's it gonna stop raining?
Oh, we get the weeds pulled out in the middle here, but we haven't set up a time zone yet till after this, and then once I'll get with Ripple and we'll get that all straightened out.
They didn't give you any idea that it's gonna take.
They won't like to do it in a 3-day weekend, so,
Okay.
which is,
We got one coming up. Come on here.
yeah, it's not gonna happen that fast. We'll work on it. We'll have some bypassing going on while this is curing. So I'm hoping, what I'd like to do is dig that up on like a Friday night, pour it. That way our traffic flow will be to the minimum on that whole situation.
Well, it is what it is. I just, it's gonna take whatever time. I just was curious if you had a
Timeframe, no, I
a
haven't.
prediction. Okay.
What's the cure time on that, just for curiosity?
That one is 2 days.
2
They're
days.
saying 2 days it'll be totally ready to go, so. And that's just that 8-inch of concrete.
Cool. Thanks, Glenn. Sure.
Morning, Jerry.
Good morning. Morning, Jerry.
The item here is to request permission to start discussions with Cleveland Water to expand the direct service area of the water is that Clean Water provides to the county. The direct service area is basically Cleveland Water handles all maintenance, repairs, upgrades, and then billing, and they're a direct customer of Cleveland Water. This one specifically on Pettibone Road, the Parkside Church that was built on Pettibone Road or upgraded about 5 or 6 years ago, at that point they extended the water line and we expanded the direct service area to include their parcel. There was a parcel between the Solon line and Parkside Church's parcel that at the time was owned by the VFW. The VFW didn't want to have anything to do with that project at the time, so they weren't included in the direct service agreement. Now Parkside Church owns that VFW parcel. They bought that VFW parcel and they're wanting to build and connect the water line, so we have to amend the direct service agreement to add them to that water line.
Questions? No? Go ahead.
The Department of Water Resources is requesting the board approve and authorize the department to begin discussions with the City of Cleveland Division of Water for an expansion to the direct service agreement for the addition of permanent parcel 02380200 7040 Pennybone Road in Bainbridge Township.
So move.
Second.
Commissioner Rea?
Aye.
Commissioner Spillier?
Aye.
Commissioner Claypool?
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. You wait a little time so we can skip over the next one.
We can go down to
Go to 14.
14.
You want me to cover this? Okay. Items 14 through 19 relate to the issuance of notes for 2015. And the first items 14 and 15 relate to the radio system, the digital radio system that was purchased. I believe the original price was $4.5 million. And notes were issued for that, and we are paying that down at the rate of $500,000 a year. The goal to have that paid off within 10 years by paying down a little bit on the balance of the notes every year. So right now, we have a $3 million note that's maturing, so we're issuing $2.5 million, and then we're kicking in $500,000 that was set aside in the general fund to pay down that debt. So that's just our ongoing, and that was really tied to the safety center debt that was paid off last year. So last year, we made the final payment to the safety center, and then we also paid some on the radio system. So by issuing these notes and paying in $500,000 from the general fund, that'll bring our debt on the radio system down to $2.5 million. The other four actions are to raise a total of $800,000 against the construction of two facilities for the county engineer, one being the office addition and the other being the salt storage structure. We're allowed to issue debt against that construction on payments that are being paid here in the last 60 days or so before the notes are going to be issued. So in conferring with bond counsel at Squire Sanders Dempsey, we were able to come upon having an issuance of $315,000, which is the approximate amount of money that we know for sure will be expended on the completion of the engineer's building addition, plus $485,000 for the salt storage structure, making for a total of $800,000. This money will then go into the general fund construction account and will be used for various projects that we're facing this summer from our maintenance department. Capital projects, rebuilding out office space. There's some work to be done in JFS in the parking lot, possible expenses related to the law library. So we believe that should be sufficient amount of money to handle that. So then, going forward, we'll be not only paying that $500,000 a year for the next few years on the radio system, we'll then be paying down the debt that we're issuing, $800,000 worth of debt on these capital projects. And because we are being paid back by the county engineer at the rate of 78% of the construction costs over 15 years, we'll be recouping from him most of the money we need over the next few years to pay back the $800,000 back, or pay that debt down.
But the projects that you mentioned, is it safe to say that, at least from my knowledge, the one that's a big question mark is the JFS facility, the paving and all the, I mean, this is a drop in the bucket out here.
Well, we hope.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, size-wise,
Well,
virtual, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, the parking lot job that was just approved, that's part of it, but also possible renovations to building.
Yeah, no, I meant the parking lot, you
Yeah.
know, I mean,
Yeah.
you peel back the cover and you don't know what you'll find underneath.
True.
But at JFS, we know that that entire facility is probably, well, it's way past due, and it may not, it was built on fill,
It was
as I
built on fill.
understand, and it just didn't,
Well, it's shifted over time.
Yeah,
And that
standard.
parking lot, because of all the clients using GFS services, gets a lot of use. So it's not just a repaving down there, it's a full depth repair to make sure the underlying foundation is secure. There's engineering work that has to be done up front. So that could be a substantial project. There's also some other projects with the GFS building. And the way that works is that ultimately that gets rolled into rental payments back to the general fund. So the general fund will recoup that money as well. So we're getting the money back for building projects from the county engineer. We'll get back the money over time for the GFS projects as well.
I wanted, on the record, to
Yep.
clarify.
Yep.
How do you wanna read them?
We can do them all together if you would like, or do you wanna do them two, two, and two?
What do you think, a better way to do it is, doesn't make any difference, why don't we just read them all together?
Yeah, I think that's
And I have all the fiscal officer certificates for the three, and then 3 resolutions up here. Commissioner's Office is requesting the board acknowledge receipt of the fiscal officer's certificate in regards to the $2.5 million public safety communication system improvement note series 2015. The Commissioner's Office is requesting the board approve and execute resolution number 15-086, providing for the issuance of notes of the county of Geauga in the aggregate principal amount of $2.5 million in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying costs of acquiring and installing a public safety communication system. The Commissioner's Office is requesting the board acknowledge receipt of the fiscal officer certificate in regards to the $315,000 building addition for the administrative offices and functions of the County Engineers Department Improvement Note Series 2015. The Commissioner's Office is requesting the board approve and execute resolution number 15-087, providing for the issuance of notes of the County of Geauga in the aggregate principal amount of $315,000 in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying a portion of the cost of constructing a building addition for the administrative offices and functions of the County Engineers Department. The Commissioner's Office is requesting the board acknowledge receipt of the fiscal officer certificate in regards to the $485,000 construction of a salt storage structure improvement notes, Series 2015. The Commissioner's Office is requesting the board approve and execute resolution number 15-088, providing for the issuance of notes of the County of Geauga in the aggregate principal amount of $485,000 in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying costs of constructing a salt storage structure.
I'll make those motions.
Commissioner Rea?
Aye.
Commissioner Spillier? Commissioner Claypool?
Let me add that the county auditor will be working, we're going to have a new investment advisor, Steve Santo. There'll be an agreement to work with him coming before the board for this year, for next Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Okay. And so he'll be working to go out to the market to sell the $3.5 million or $3.3 million worth of notes and try to get us the lowest interest rate. Last year was like less than 0.5%, 0.4 or something like that.
I thought it was 0.03.
It could have been, yeah, it was well under
It
0.5%.
was.
And by using an advisor who has familiarity with the people that are interested in these things, that he can kind of bring these notes to the attention of people that are looking for very safe and secure investments from an entity like Geauga County on a tax-exempt note.
Where's the other guy?
The other gentleman is
Passed away.
yeah, John Cotter. Yeah, he got some area. So Steve Santo was with National City Bank years ago. He's has the same kind of familiarity with the market.
That's it here.
Yeah.
Shoot.
Sorry,
Okay.
I'm trying to keep everything together.
given where things are going in Greece right now, this probably would be a good investment.
Yeah, yeah.
My fears are pushing this down there, we just need a manager pack.
They're all color coded, so we're good.
No, it's gonna be yellow.
I did red, yellow, and green.
What are you saying, these two? Oh, that's me.
No, this is the auditor, or fiscal officer, you're just the auditor, you did this one.
You want to do Mr. Milligan?
Absolutely. Next item on the agenda is a recommendation that the board approve the promotion and appointment of Gerard Morgan to the position of Director of the Department of Water Resources. And he retained the title of sanitary engineer. Jerry was hired a number of years ago as part of the succession planning, knowing that Doug Bowen was going to be retiring at some point. Jerry is a very highly qualified individual, having both a professional engineer designation and a law degree. And we've been very fortunate to have him in training under Doug for a period of time. By our policy, he's currently a sanitary engineer, he's grade 16, step 6, and by our policy, he would be entitled upon appointment to grade 17, step 5, at a rate of $35.48 per hour to take over as Director of Water Resources, effective August 1st, 2015.
Okay. Well, I think, is Jerry still in there? I think we're extremely fortunate to have Jerry. And I just learned about his law degree, so I knew he was a very capable, competent engineer, but I'm impressed having that law degree, although I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Because they don't hold that against me.
Well, you know, sometimes
We still like it.
sometimes we're lacking having enough attorneys, so we can come to you if we need more advice.
Be the tiebreaker.
So we're very fortunate to have you, and very pleased to be able to do this. So with that,
The Commissioner's Office is requesting the board approve the promotion and appointment of Gerard Morgan to the position of Director of the Department of Water Resources, number 2302, retaining title of sanitary engineer. to be effective August 1st, 2015, at the rate of $35.48 per hour, grade 17, step 5.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Commissioner Rea?
Aye.
Commissioner Spudler?
Aye.
Commissioner Claypool?
Emphatic yes.
Thank you. Congratulations, Jerry. Thank you.
Let's do the next one.
I'll explain the next one too. We had an opening in our office for administrative assistant. We had a promotion due to one of our folks going to work for the county engineer. Deb Ashburn had been in this position as our front desk administrative assistant, and she was promoted to budget officer. We've had a temp, Kat Kress, who's done a wonderful job for us while she's been here. We had interviews of a number of qualified people. And Christina Regal was the one who rose to the top. She's got a lot of experience in mortgages. She's actually worked with the kind of financing that community development does all the time, so she's very strong in math. Got a very outgoing personality. You need a special kind of personality, I think, to work in this kind of environment, in this kind of office. And I think she's going to fit in just great, and we're happy to recommend it to the board.
Just as a side note, I did talk to her on, what was it, Friday?
Friday you talked.
And gave her a surprise test she didn't expect. And she passed the test, and so I was happy with it. So, yeah.
The Commissioner's Office is requesting the Board approve hiring Christina M. Regal to the position of part-time administrative assistant number 1319-1 to be effective July 7th, 2015, at a rate of $12.64 per hour. After the successful completion of a 1,000-hour probationary period, the rate will increase to $13.30 per hour.
Make that motion.
Second.
Commissioner Rea?
Aye.
Commissioner Spudler?
Aye.
Commissioner Claypool? Number 22, we have to wait.
Paperwork isn't here yet?
Laura will not be here until 10 o'clock.
Okay.
So if you want to go to number 23, you have 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
10 minutes to get to do your tax budget hearing.
Yeah.
So
Deb, we're running a little ahead of schedule.
Wonderful.
If you have all the folks here.
But at 9:45, we gotta cut you off because we have a public hearing.
On the
Well-
tax budget.
We'll speak quickly. Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Rendelli is president of the library board, and he appreciates the opportunity to address you today about our fine library, where we're going, how we're more needed than ever, and the great equalizer in our community. So, Mr.
Why don't
Rendelli
you
lives
come
in
on up
Auburn,
and-
and he'd like to come up front and
You
talk.
can take the honored seat.
Thank
you.
We also have some other library board members here today. Kate Patrone is here, Karen Delano, and I believe Josh Hutchinson is on his way too from Middlefield.
And we apologize for what might be a short time here, so if after the hearing you want to say a few more words.
I'm used to being told that I have less time to speak than I could normally fill if I just went on and on. So, as Debbie said, I'm Ray Rondelli. I'm currently the president of the board of trustees for the Geauga County Public Library. Debbie's been with us for 30 years, 25 as the director, and she's retiring. And in the past, we've relied greatly on her to be our interface with the county government. In light of her impending departure, the board is trying to get more active and engaging with the county government. And we wanted to come here today basically just to briefly update you on where the library is and to talk a little bit about an upcoming appointment to the board. The state of the library is very sound. This is just so despite many years of deliberate and sometimes steep cutbacks in our state funding. And then after that, the sort of unintended consequences of reductions in our funding that come from the tax relief as it shrinks the general fund. The voters of the county were gracious enough a couple years ago to give us a second mill of levy to help us combat the detrimental effects of declining state revenue. That most recent levy was sought only after the library took every reasonable measure to control its costs and expenses, including deep cuts to materials acquisition and the deferral of a number of repairs and capital projects that were otherwise due. Since the passage of that levy, the library has focused on catching up on needed expenditures, repairing parking lots, adding handicap parking spaces, roof repair, replacement of HVAC equipment, computer refresh, and we're looking at new phones as well. The additional levy was, in the board's view, prudent planning to make up for what we expect to be continued declines in the revenue that we get from the state. And so that we can continue to offer Geauga County the level of library service that we've offered them for many years. The library itself, we believe, is very successful. It has the highest per capita library circulation in the state of Ohio. Our bookmobile circulates more than 3 times material than any next highly used bookmobile in the state. We're well supported within the community. We have the Library Foundation, which has over 100 members. We have the 7 Friends of the Library groups with over 1,000 members. In combining fiscal prudence with community interaction, the library has more than 100 local residents who volunteer their time to help the library provide public service. The library is always striving to improve its facilities. Some recent things that we've done in that regard is we moved the Thompson Station to a new building, the Ledgemont Elementary. That facility will stay in operation despite the merger of the Ledgemont and Berkshire school districts. We have more space. We have brighter space. We have what we believe is more functional space there. And much of the cost of that was borne by the Ledgemont School District because they have this SPATS foundation money that they needed to spend. So that was, again, a bump up in public service without really a corresponding bump up in cost to the public. We're in the process of moving the Newbury Station from the old school building into the auditorium building. Again, we're going to have much more space, brighter space at not much additional cost, and we'll have access to the auditorium, which gives us a public venue for events of a size and accommodation that we've never had before. And as part of our commitment to community outreach, we're also taking steps to increase our ability to serve those who cannot come to our facilities by upgrading our bookmobile and expanding our bookmobile service. It heavily serves the Amish community. It also serves the preschools and the senior centers, 3 constituencies that sometimes have difficulty getting to one of our 4 main buildings or one of our 2 branches. In planning for the future, the board has prudently purchased land adjacent to both the Bainbridge branch and the Charter branch so that when it comes time to expand those facilities, we have room to grow and stay within compliance of not covering too much green space. Right now in Bainbridge, we've maxed out on how much space we can cover unless we ask for relief from the zoning regulations. And we're actively exploring whether or not we should expand in Bainbridge. The building, we believe, is undersized. It's near its life expectancy. It was built more than 30 years ago at a time when construction costs were very high, so we weren't able to build the sort of facility then that we subsequently were able to build in West G and Middlefield. I don't know if you've seen those facilities. We think the Bainbridge community is underserved, but it will be up to the voters of Auburn and Bainbridge to decide whether or not we expand. We don't build buildings out of our operating funds. We go to the public and we ask for permission. If they say no, we make do. And we're actively exploring whether or not it's time to ask the members of that community to see if they want better and more improved library service at that facility. At the upcoming budget hearing, the library board expects to present a budget that will address concerns expressed last year about carryover. After the most recent levy passed, we built up a carryover, but again, that was anticipated because we had a backlog of things that we needed to do that we had deferred in the 4 or 5 years of what is colloquially referred to as the Great Recession. So that I can meet my time limit, I'll get to the other reason we're here today, and that is to advise you that we have made a recommendation to the commissioners with respect to the next board slot that comes open. Karen Delano has been on the board for 24 years. We'd like to see her continue on for another 7-year term. Traditionally, the terms of the board members have expired on June 30th. By some quirk, the last time she was appointed, her term runs out on July 31st, so we have plenty of time. We have the entire month of July for you to consider. It is your appointment. It is yours to exercise as you see fit. The board would like you to consider our recommendation and consider our input and consider it in light of the fact of the success of the library over the 30 years of past practice where both the commissioners and the judges, who are the 2 selecting agencies, have pretty much looked to the board for recommendations with respect to its membership. It is an incredibly smooth functioning board. We've been on the board for 9 years. There's a wide, diverse viewpoint, but there is a commitment to collegiality and a commitment to consensus building and reaching decisions that make serving on this board an absolute pleasure. And as a lawyer, I observe a lot of public agencies and their functions, and sometimes they don't function as smoothly as you'd like them. This board is very effective. I think the library service that you get is a testimony to that. I think the public support that we have is a testimony to that. And so we would like your consideration of Karen for reappointment for another 7-year term. It would help us immensely at this time because we're at a critical juncture because we're trying to select a new director. We have to select a new director by October 1st because Debbie's leaving us on September 30th. And having Karen's 24 years of experience along with Paul Newman's 30 years of experience, my 9 years of experience, and we have some more junior board members as well, Having this diverse viewpoint is going to help us select a director that hopefully will serve Geauga County well for the next 30 years as well. Thank you for your time and attention. If you have any questions at all, I know you don't have time for them today, but the board members want to be responsive to your questions. We're happy to come to another meeting. We're happy to meet with you together. However you want to do it. If you have questions, if you want to address them to us individually, we're happy to address those questions. We realize we have our critics. We feel we are prepared to meet the concerns any of those critics have expressed, whether directly or anonymously, because we think we have been prudent stewards of the public money that we're entrusted with. We think we've spent it well, we think we will continue to spend it well, and we think Karen will help us do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
You did a
you.
nice job. And if, I don't know how the other board members feel, but if you're in the mood to stick around, I don't know if anybody has any questions for them. If not, we'll have that opportunity following the 9:45 session. So,
I'm sure we'll stick around, Mr. Claypool.
okay.
Thank you.
2 minutes to
Two
spare.
minutes to spare. Warm
Wow.
up the overhead here. You have some jokes for us? Do a preview show?
The intro.
Yeah. There it comes, okay, it's finally coming in. On the high-tech wall.
Reading of the legal notice.
There we
One bird has an eye.
go. Well, what Heidi was noticing, the screw that holds up
Yeah.
the map is right below the one bird's eye. But, okay, now we're on to,
Okay, we have to read.
We need a motion to waive the reading of the legal notice.
can you make that motion?
I'll move. To wait.
Commissioner Reer?
Aye.
Commissioner Spillier?
Aye.
Commissioner Claypool?
Yeah, you might want to sit down and sit down in the audience.
Kill votes.
Drum
Yeah,
roll,
let's, yeah,
please.
sit in Blake's chair.
It's warm.
So, I'm sorry, yeah, we'll hit the lights. Before we hit the lights, we'll introduce Heidi Delaney. For those of you who don't know her, she's our budget and finance minister, or manager. And she's been with us 9 years now. We have a very lean budget staff, which is comprised primarily of Heidi. And she does an awesome job. She's going to do most of the talking today because this is really her work. She doesn't really need me to add much to her, but I'll kind of do the intro here and we'll get started. Okay, so by law, the commissioners have to adopt a tax budget and present it to the auditor by July 15th. So we always do this presentation to kind of give everyone some insight into the beginning of the budgeting process for 2016. In April, we asked the departments to submit their budgetary requests for the new year, and they're able now with the accounting system we have now, they're able to put their requests into the system, so we have some sense of what they're looking for. We give them guidelines of what the commissioners want to try and hold the line on this year. One of the biggest expenditures in government, obviously, are salaries. Based on our expectations of flat revenues and expenses that will continue to climb, for the time being, we've asked that there be no salary increases put in for next year. You know, if things improve toward the end of the year, maybe the commissioners will see fit to change that, but for now, that's part of what's in this budget. And as we go on, we'll have some more specifics. We tend to focus on our general fund. As Heidi will explain, we have a lot of funds in the county budget. Let me go on to the tax budget guidelines. I'll cover the rest of that here in a minute. We use the tax budget as a planning tool. We use it as required by law to demonstrate need to levy taxes. We are always conservative in our estimates, and by that I mean we tend to estimate our revenues on the low side, because things can happen where the revenues won't be what we expect, so we keep our estimates on revenue low. And we tend to estimate our expenses on the high side. We expect that all of our appropriations will be spent, and they usually are not, what was actually spent, the appropriation doesn't exceed 90% of what was appropriated. And the other thing we want to emphasize is this is not the final budget that will actually guide or limit spending next year. This is a tax budget, and the final appropriation is variable. What the commissioners will ultimately approve in December and then subsequently adjust in January when the actual carryover is known may be different, maybe higher in some cases, maybe lower in some cases. So this is just a planning tool, but this is the start of our budgeting cycle. Now I'll let Heidi take it from here, and we'll go from there.
Okay, I put this slide in here just to kind of start us off, because a lot of times when I'm talking to people about property taxes, I find that they don't always have a good understanding of what actually comes into the county and we budget for versus what they're paying in their property taxes. So this is a slide from the Geauga County, one of the publications they put out. And it's just on the average, because yours is gonna vary by where you live, but on the average, for every dollar that you pay in property taxes, about 20.62 cents comes to fund county programs. So the remaining 79 cents goes to your local community, your local school district, the joint vocational school, and also the library. Use a portion of that. So you can just see a graphic representation about how much actually comes into the county.
So people look at their, if you look on the REA link on the county website,
Right.
you'll see, if you go to your own property, you'll see it'll show you how much you're spending, and it'll have, county taxes. And
Right.
we're gonna kind of drill down to that so you can see what really comprises county taxes.
And I would encourage you to do that. It's actually a very nice feature. You can look up your own property and see where that money goes. Okay, and then this is just a chart that shows the breakdown of that 20.62 on the average cents. About 26% goes to the Board of DD for their programs. Children's Services Levy, another 6%. Road and Bridge, which is the Engineers Fund, about 8.5%. The Board of Mental Health, about 10%. Senior Citizens has their own levy, that's about 8.6%. And also almost 16 cents to the Park District. The remaining almost 22% comes into the general fund, and that's what we're gonna be talking about today. The Park District and the Health District portion, we do not do their budget, we're not their appropriating authority, so they do their own budgets. Those other funds are found within the commissioner's budget.
And let me add, in the library, which we're glad you're all here, along with the Health District and the Park District, a lot of people don't understand the commissioner's budget. The library, the Park District, Health District are all entities that are county entities that are not in this budget. By law, the commissioners don't control that budget, so what we're talking about excludes those. The other thing we'll note on this slide is, except for the almost 22% that goes to the general fund through the 2.5 mils of inside general fund millage, the rest of that is all voted by the taxpayers. So people have chosen to tax themselves at that level for all these other components.
And just the general fund portion, on average, comes out to be about 4.5 cents for the dollar that's gonna come into the general fund. Okay, so as Dave said, the total 2016 tax budget is $112.4 million. That's all the funds found within the budget. There are over 150 this year. The majority of those are what we call special revenue funds, where they're either funded by a grant or federal or state dollars, and those dollars can only be spent for certain purposes. Whereas the general fund is more of operating, we have a little more leeway in how that money is spent. And the general fund budget this year is about $30.5 million. We also had requests, as Dave said, the departments put in their requests for the budget, and those total about $31.9 million. So you can see we had to have some cuts to those requests. They're not all funded within this budget. Okay, so the first thing we need to do when we're getting into the budget is determine what the resources are, what is available to spend. And when the Budget Commission looks at your resources, they'll look at two things. They're what you have estimated in your revenues for the next year, and also what you're gonna carry over. And those two combined is what you are able to appropriate for the year. For the 2016 tax budget, we're estimating a carryover balance of $4,500,000. That's a pretty conservative estimate. It's typically higher than that, but again, for budgeting purposes, we like to remain on the conservative side. And then the actual revenues we're going to expected to be received are just under 26 million for total resources of $30,459,074, and that's gonna match the appropriations. And this is just a slide to show the breakdown of those revenue sources, what makes up that 26 million that's coming in each year. As you can see, the sales tax is about 46% and the real estate tax is about 29%. So those two revenue sources together make up about 75% of what comes into the general fund. And we have some other, probably the next highest is the department in fees and fines, and those are the fees that are charged by the county departments for the services they provide to the residents. Property transfer tax is charged actually when a property changes hands, when a deed is transferred. And that kind of mirrors what's going on with the real estate market. Casino tax is a relatively new tax. It's taxes that are earned on the gross earnings made by a casino. The counties by law receive 51% of that funding, and it's broken up by population. Prisoner housing is our jail houses prisoners from outside of the county. Most of them are federal immigration prisoners or Geauga County, and there's some other small, but we receive revenues for those prisoners being housed in the jail. Cost allocation is what we charge back to departments outside of the general fund. Some of the special revenue funds pay funds back into the general fund for services that are provided to them. Local government tax is a revenue sharing tax that comes back to us from the state for the sales and the income tax that you pay. That is a funding source that's been rapidly decreasing over the years. And also interest income, also substantially decreased the past couple of years due to the interest rate. That other 3% is mostly rental income that we receive from some of the agencies that rent from us. We have gas well proceeds. We have a couple gas wells on county properties. Things like we have a county auction where things are sold, so it's kind of the miscellaneous. So that makes up all the revenue sources that come into the general fund.
Okay, this is my favorite slide. Tell what a boring kind of guy I am. And I presented basically the same slide, and we had a budget summit on April 15th, appropriately enough. And this is a summary of general revenue fund revenue sources by major categories. And I apologize, the colors don't really come out as nice as they do if you're looking at the computer screen, but I'll try and walk you through it. This shows the top level income for the general fund going back to 2008. And then here 2014 is the last actual number we have. So 2008 it was 28.4 million. In 2009 the bottom kind of fell out and it dropped to 24.5 million. And then it slowly recovered, but there was kind of an artificial bump that I'll come back to and talk about in a minute. So the last actual number on revenue for the general fund for 14 was 29.1 million. You'll notice the drop for 15 budgeted for the rest of the year and 16 estimated. That is really just a result of very conservative forecasting. We suspect that, probably when it's all said and done, there won't be a huge change between 14 and 15, but we are not going to assume that because as we found out in 2009, things can turn on a dime and you can be caught short. So we budget very conservatively. The thing I like to emphasize on this slide is comparing the last, what people would say normal year, 2008. We had $28.4 million in the general fund. And you look at 2014, you say, well, it's 29.1. Okay. Top level, we've seen our overall revenue over that period of time increase by a total of 2.5%. Not much of an increase, especially when you factor in inflation. But what makes it even worse is, back in 2008, we were telling the auditor to take $500,000 or $1.5 million, and instead of giving it to the general fund, put it directly into our debt retirement fund, because we were aggressively paying down the safety center at the time. So this $28.4 million didn't include $1.5 million that was set off specifically to pay down debt. Today, in order to pay down debt, we have to consciously make a decision to move money out of the general fund, reduce what's available in the general fund to meet our obligations to pay down debt. So you can look at that a couple different ways. In the simplest way, you'll see this little red slice down here. This is called millage shift, and this is where we had the $1.5 million put back into the general fund. So to compare 08 with 14, you would subtract $1.5 million from 29.1, so you'd be down at 27.6. So actually, not even accounting for inflation, our resources in net are down $800,000 from where they were in 2008. So that gives us kind of an indication of the limitations on our resources. We get to the expenditure side of thing, we don't have the comparable slide in there from the budget summit, but in that same period of time, our expenditures went up 7.07%. That's pretty good. That's a lot less that's half the rate of inflation to have your expenses in general fund only go up 7% from 08 to 14. But when your revenue is only gone up 2.5%, and that includes that artificial shift, that can tell you what a severe problem we face going forward out of that general fund. And again, the general fund is there to handle all the things that the commissioners have kind of discretionary input over on how to prioritize taxpayer money. The rest of the money that we talk about in this budget, special revenue funds, they're there for a specific purpose. It's the general fund where the commissioners have the ability to make hard decisions and change things around. Anybody have any questions on this before Heidi moves on?
Okay, so in looking at the changes to those available resources over the past couple of years, you can see in 2013, our actual unencumbered carryover balance was just under $4.7 million. The revenue that year was about 28.6, so that gave us resources of about 33.3 million. And then you see in 2014, that unencumbered carryover balance went up to $7.2 million. We had revenue about 29, so that gave us 36 million. That big change in the carryover was, as Dave was just discussing, is prior to that in the end of 2012, going into 2013, we had shifted a lot of money to the debt reduction. We did not do as much in beginning of 2014 because we just weren't really sure what we were facing. So that's why that carryover is substantially larger. And then in 2015, our unencumbered carryover balance was about 6.7 million. Again, a little bit higher. And our current year revenues are about 25 million is what we have estimated for our total resources, about 31 million. And then going into 2016, as I said, our estimate is 4.5 million, and our revenues are up a little bit at about 25.9 million. So the increase of the revenue is about 900,000 that we're estimating for next year, and we'll get into what those changes are. Most of it obviously is sales tax revenue. We had in previous years, we were estimate about 11 million, so next year we bumped that up to 12 million just based on our collections for the past couple of years. Property transfer tax, our auditors have indicated to us that they think that will be up about $100,000, so that's added into those estimates. Again, we got word from the state that our local government fund was going to be reduced further by about $140,000, and then we had some other smaller revenue items that we reduced the expectation on that. So our net changes for next year are about $904,000 increase. So that's the revenue side of it. Now we start to get into the expense side of it. The general fund operating expenses next year are estimated about $30.5 million. If you look at what our current year budget is to next year's estimate, it's an increase of about $291,000, excluding our transfers out. And these are the factors that went into it. I think as Dave had discussed, we put in, the guidelines were a 0% wage increase budgeted, except we're mandated by labor agreements. We do have for our sheriff's office, they are union personnel and their contract mandates an increase. We had an estimate of 12% increase to our hospitalization costs. We don't have that final figure, we'll have it in October. We'll know what that actually is.
It's probably gonna be right at that level or maybe slightly higher than that, because our claims this year weren't particularly good. But we've been able to save some money because generally what comes in through we were in a self-insurance pool with 32 other counties. And we've seen increases usually in the single-digit range, but this year it may be at or slightly above that 12%.
And also, most of the large equipment requests that are funded in the current year budget are not funded in the tax budget, and that's very typical. We wait to see what that carryover is and what's available to fund those larger purchases. Okay, so as I said, it's up about $291,000. That's about a 1.1% increase, and this is how that breaks down. We had the hospitalization cost, that 12% increase amounts to about $271,000. The salary, Medicare, and OPRS figures for the mandated labor agreements are about $197,000. Equipment that's not funded in that budget totaled up to about $20,000 difference, and then we had some other miscellaneous reductions in expenses that we will not have. We're hoping for next year to bring it to about $291,000 increase over our current year budget. This just kind of shows where that's broken down within the general fund and the change from year to year. So the public safety category obviously is the largest part of the budget, and that is our sheriff's office. It also includes the coroner's office and the building department. Legislative and executive would include most of your other elected officials in the county, so the auditor's office, the commissioner's office, the treasurer's, the recorder's, the prosecutor's office are in there, as well as our maintenance department, board of elections. The judicial encompasses the courts, so that would be our common pleas court, the juvenile probate court, and the municipal court, as well as the clerk of court's office and our public defender's office. Conservation and recreation, that is the funding that we provide to the OSU Cooperative Extension Office, which is out by the fairgrounds, as well as the Soil and Water Conservation District. Human Services is our Veteran Service Commission, the services they provide to the veterans. The health line is mandated by the ORC to the county. It is through the Department of Health. We are required to appropriate 1/10 of a mil, which is about $312,000, to children that are determined to have medical handicaps, and we pay that through the state. So that's our maximum liability. We don't always go up to that. It's usually probably about half of that, but we are required to put that in the budget. And then the miscellaneous is just a number of things. Most of that is the funding that we provide to the youth center, which is operated through Ravenwood. It's also our property, vehicle, and liability insurance for the whole county. Our postage is in there, the legal fees, some of our professional service contracts, and also we provide funding to some outside agencies such as the Tourism Board, now known as Destination Geauga, Historical Society, the Agricultural Society, also Lake Geauga Recovery Centers. We provide funding to them. So you can see it's about a $291,000 difference in the budgets, about 1.1%. And again, this is just shows kind of by operating categories, a pie chart of how that's broken down. Again, you have public safety as the largest, then the legislative and executive, and the judicial. And those three together make up about 90%, with the other being split with those smaller categories. So this is just a recap. Our current tax budget requirement, the way we have it budgeted right now, is $30.459074 million, and our revenues are estimated to be just under $26 million. So our carryover requirement is $4.5 million. And we feel that's a good estimate because the actual unencumbered carryover has ranged the last 5 years from about $3.7 to $7.2 million. And increases done to that by either exceeding your revenue estimates or spending less. As David said, we usually only spend about 90% of our appropriation, so there are savings in there.
So the overall goal, as always, is to keep the general increases at or below 2015 levels where possible. Again, talking about how flat our revenue is, we really can't afford to have the spending go up overall much at all. Limiting our new initiatives to those which show an immediate return on investment and added value to Geauga taxpayers. We talked earlier about the refinancing where the county engineer has got a couple projects that the general fund has loaned money to help sustain. One is moving his offices from the building 5 next door down to his engineer's garage on the Merritt Road. That'll save the taxpayers overall because he'll be able to lower his administrative expenses by having all his staff in one location. And the other project is a new salt storage project or structure that'll be able to hold, I don't know how many,
12,000 tons, I think.
12,000
12 to
tons.
14,000 tons of rock salt.
of salt. And rock salt, as you may have seen in the news, the price fluctuates tremendously. So the more you can buy when the market is low, the more you'll save overall. So again, that's an expenditure where it's kind of a little pressure on the general fund in the short term to forward that money, get that done. But the commissioners did that because they can see there's a return on investment where it makes sense to do that. Any questions? Mrs. Jones?
Yes. In anticipation of the Cargill price fixing litigation that was resolved in May, is there any kind of understanding about any kind of possible settlement, I shouldn't say possible, what are the prospects for settlement with Geauga County in terms of revenue?
I haven't asked the county engineer about that. I'm presuming since they deal directly with Cargill and other suppliers that they'll be getting some sort of estimate, but our office hasn't been given a specific estimate on what kind of settlement.
Yeah,
Obviously,
so-
that would enable them to have more resources to fill up that new building as soon as it's done. It's expected to be done here in, I think, late July, latest.
So there's no way to guesstimate whether the anticipated return will be used towards new purchase of salt. I understand that's one of the provisions in the settlement.
Well, I would assume that's how it's
Yeah,
used. I mean,
yeah.
the money we use to, the money that's used to buy salt comes out of the engineer's funds, and those funds are limited by law for that purpose.
Right,
So if we get money back in, it would be.
Yeah, the actual settlement then, I understand is to be used for repurchase.
And, and the nature of how that money be received would limit it in any event to that
Okay,
purpose.
thank you.
One of the disadvantages that we had before, and an advantage we'll have now, is we didn't have adequate space to stockpile the salt. So the idea was we'd be able to take advantage of the funding, the savings, when we buy it in May or whenever it's low. Also, if there is a settlement where we get it in product, we get it back in product, we'll at least have someone to put it, because I was told that there's probably no way that we're gonna get that building turned over to us and fill it in 1 year. That it's just not feasible to buy 12 to 14,000 tons of salt all at one time. The idea was we'd buy as much as we can, hopefully we'd have a mild winter, and then we could buy that much again the next year, and pretty soon, once we get it filled up, it's undercover, it won't go bad. That's
That's
the plan.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Dave.
Yes, Nancy.
Back, Nancy.
So I believe Governor Kasich is going to be signing off on the state budget today. That local government fund, that was an estimate based on what? We don't,
That was the estimate given to our auditor's office.
okay. So do we think that number is going to change at all, or we don't really know yet?
We don't know yet, but I haven't heard anything about there being a fundamental change in the local government formula as it's been reestablished by Governor Kasich over the last few years.
Okay, thank you.
Debbie?
What we heard from our legislative sources, because the Public Library Fund parallels the local government fund, is that the Legislative Services Bureau of the legislature has not yet determine the final impact of the tax cuts with the percentages that were adopted in the budget. That number's expected sometime mid of next week, so we don't know with the public library fund either.
Unknowns. Any other questions? Well, thank you for sitting through this exciting presentation as it was.
Can I see Laura in the back of the room? So we can have Laura come up and provide the,
Turn the lights on.
Morning, Laura.
Just a small matter. This involves a distribution of a portion of the foreclosure proceeds in a foreclosure case. Apparently, in the course of the distribution, a portion was distributed to an individual, and she should not have received them. But we've entered into an agreement with her for the recovery of the money. And this is a consent judgment entry that we need to have executed by the commissioners. It's already approved by the property owner, her attorney, and we just need to file it with the court. So it's a pretty straightforward matter.
Commissioner's Office is requesting the board approve and authorize the president of the board to execute the Chardon Municipal Court Civil Division consent judgment entry between the Geauga County Board of Commissioners and Wanda and Myers.
Make that motion.
second?
There's 3 copies there.
Aye.
Commissioner Spudler.
Aye.
Commissioner Claypool.
Right.
Thanks for the call too.
Sure.
Do you need all 3 back? If not,
If
there's a
you,
4th one we can
if you want
decide.
to keep one original, I'll just take 2 back.
Because I have a copy that you can sign as well.
Okay, sure.
Thank you, Laura.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, did we want to offer the library board an opportunity to, if there's any questions, I don't know if there are any, but if there's any questions for the board, we can certainly ask them now. So, do you want to come back up in the hot seat?
I'm gonna bring Debbie with me, because she knows more than I do.
Oh, I don't know about that.
She knows more than most of us, probably all of us. She's the librarian.
We're the information place.
All right, so I have one question for you.
Yes, sir.
Is the librarian anything like the show where the guy's going out and collecting all these dangerous artifacts and putting them into? Are you like that? Do you have this magical?
I'm not permitted to speak.
Okay, I'm just kind of curious.
She could tell you, but she'd have to kill you.
I left my cape in the car.
Whenever I hear the term librarian now, that's what I conjures up in my mind.
I like that series a lot. I like that. No, I like that.
My grandkids like it. So with that said,
I think it's great to have a one-on-one with several of our board members here because, last year we had a difficult time with the appointment, and we really want to work with you. A year ago, we talked about establishing a mechanism by which we could communicate, and you could have a process for appointing people to boards because you appoint to a lot of boards. I did after the meeting, as you asked, Mr. Spudler asked me to call the prosecutor, and he and I had a very productive conversation. So I know that you're searching for a way to vet candidates because you appoint to many boards, and you want to make sure you have the right and best candidates for a variety of boards. Whom you might appoint to a soil and water board may not be the same person as you want to appoint to a library board. So we have had in place for a couple of decades a mechanism in which we try to solicit candidates for you and the judges, because this isn't unusual. It only happens every 7 years when we have 2 commissioners in a row, because it's commissioner, judge, and then because there's 7, at one point there were 2 commissioners in a row. What we generally do is we look for somebody who knows about the library. We advertise in the library. I have a copy of the packet that we use that has our policy, We also have an advertisement that we place in the libraries. We have a form people fill out. We are looking for wide diversity on the board. We want people from all geographic areas of the board, of the county. We don't want everybody from Chardon or everybody from Middlefield. And we also want people that bring a variety of experiences and expertise to the board. So we like to have people with kids in school, because at one point we had mostly retirees on the board, and school kids use libraries a different way. We like to have that variety. And what we do is put a sign up in every library. For us, the basic qualification is that you should have a library card. You can't see somebody who doesn't even use the library wanting to serve on the library board. We go from there. If we have somebody who's been on our board for a long time and has been doing a fine job, the board usually, as a courtesy, says, would you like to serve another term or not? Sometimes they say, no, I'm done. Sometimes they say, yes, I can do that again. And sometimes the board doesn't ask and seeks outside candidates because the board member has not been productive or hasn't been helpful to the board. And we're trying to make sure that the board is always active. You know how hard it is to get 7 people together at a time. And we have almost perfect attendance from every library board member. They're there, they're actively involved in seeking my successor. So they've got that all set up with meetings that they have and conference calls and all that kind of stuff. So I think that if we could work with you, establish a timeline, you have some homework you want to do before you consider this appointment. We have done some of our homework. We'll be glad to share what we can. Let's work in partnership. Maybe we need to call and remind you every year, 60 days beforehand. By the way, library board's coming up, because it usually comes as kind of a surprise, and then it's a knee-jerk reaction. Is this the right person? Is there somebody out there? And you want to do your homework, for which I laud you. Raymond, have I spoken out of turn?
That's why I brought her up here.
You did a nice job. Both of you did a real nice job. I do have 2 questions.
Sure.
One is, this is a 7-year term. Is that established by law? That seems like a
Yes.
long term.
It is.
Yes.
It's a-
There's
Established by law.
7-year term people. So there's
About a
always
year.
a new person every year. A new person every year.
4 from the commissioners and 3 from the judges.
And I apologize for my ignorance. I was mentioning to the young lady who was in a meeting with me earlier,
Mrs. Delano.
that when things appear to be running smoothly, I don't pay as much attention to some other areas, so I'm a little bit ignorant on the library board. Is there a director for the board?
There's a president of the board. I'm the director of the library. They employ me to be the administrative arm. They do what they're supposed to do, which is policy, planning, budgeting, that kind of thing. And then I do what an administrator does. I hire the staff and make sure things work and bring new ideas to the board.
So with many organizations, you would be called the director, but in this case, you're called the administrator.
I'm called the director.
Or the
I'm
director.
the director.
You are the
The director of the
director.
library.
So, and that's a paid position.
It's a paid position. I've been in that position 25 years.
And everybody else, the board members are.
All the board members serve on a complimentary basis to the state.
They don't even get their mileage.
Okay, very good.
One thing I wanted to bring up, because I think there are so many misconceptions, and I don't want to take a lot of your time. A lot of people think that libraries are going to be extinct. Why are people in this county paying to have a public library system? With technology and the internet and all that people have available to them, why is there a library? And I've worked in libraries for 48 years, so I have a pretty broad perspective. I have my master's in library science, as do all of our librarians. I believe there are 2 big reasons for public libraries. One is the public library is the great equalizer. When it was invented, it's an American invention. Benjamin Franklin started public libraries, and they are the quintessential American good idea. Everybody pays a little bit, and everybody gets a lot. So the whole world of knowledge and informed citizenry and getting the materials that you need to fix your washing machine or to educate your children or to read a story to your 3-year-old, it's all there. So whether you make $1 million a year or you're on unemployment, you can get all those resources. And having an informed citizenry and people who can learn things and advance themselves is important. The other thing is that we have become 2 libraries, literally 2 libraries. We have the traditional library for all those many people who love to read books, and they flock to us and read and read and read. We go into Amish territory, they can borrow 200 books in half an hour for a family. I mean, they read. We also have the technology library, the new library, and we have been on the forefront of that. When I spoke to a leadership Geauga class about 15 years ago, I said, here's a word I'm sure you've never heard, and I said Google, and none of them had ever heard of Google. I had been on the internet already for 7 years, back when it was Archie and Geauga, and there was no interface with even pictures on the internet. So the librarians are the people that organize knowledge and make it available. So as people get an ebook, instead of paying Amazon, we show them how to download all the free books, all the movies, all the videos, all the music that they want from the library, where we pay for licensing and they get it because they pay their taxes. They have to have a library card and a PIN number to show that there are residents that support us. The other thing that they get by membership in the library, if you is the ability to use all kinds of very expensive databases. I was a librarian for General Motors. I was a librarian for an advertising agency. When we wanted corporate information, we would use the corporate credit card and we would go to expensive resources to spit that stuff back out for us. Those sources are out there now, Hoover's in particular. You pay $50 for every corporate search you want. We're already purchasing that for you in Geauga County. If you're doing a new business search, you want to develop your business, you want to find a good vendor, you want more information, you're interviewing for a job, you want to know, all you have to do is put your library card in, go to American Business Source, and you can find more information about corporations than you could ever believe was possible. So what we do is we leverage resources and we make it possible for people who don't have those resources to get what they need. Those are the two reasons for libraries. And I don't think anybody's ever going to stop reading. I've had so many people say to me, I'll never cuddle up with a computer at night, that are now reading on their telephones in the background. So that does happen. It's just important. That and our early childhood literacy, you will always need a public library. Who's helping those kids before they're in kindergarten? And it's so important to our education right now. So I just really think the library has an important role in the future. We're not going away. It's been an exciting run for me, and I think the library is more important to the community now than when I started working for the library on August 12, 1967. So can we get together and figure out a way to have...
You were in grade school then, weren't you?
I got my driver's license the month before. So, I'd like to find a way that if you appoint one person, if you have a subcommittee, that we can make it a very smooth way to continue to have high-quality board members, which we have now. And if it ends up being somebody that you choose, I want to make sure that person understands intellectual freedom, is committed to the library, and sees as his or her purpose providing good library service to people of Geauga County with the money that they have voted and that the state gives us, while watching that money closely. You know, sometimes government feels their job is to just not spend any money. Their job is to spend the money they're given wisely for the purpose for which it's given. If that means that we cut back in library services because they're not needed, we should do that. If that means expanding service like we are now to seniors with our growing population, we just yesterday I signed a purchase order to put book returns at all the senior centers in Geauga County so they don't have to bring the books back after the bookmobile or they borrow them at the library because it's harder and harder for them to get around, especially in the winter.
I
If
really
we can get
appreciate-
together, let's do it.
Oh, well, absolutely. I don't think there's any question about that.
Good.
I appreciate your passion, by the way. I mean, I always appreciate passionate people, and it's clear that you're pretty passionate about the library. And you've actually reminded me, when I was more oriented around the business world, I would oftentimes use Hoover's and a lot of the resources you're talking about online to do company searches, to do marketing, and do so on and so forth. That's the one area that I don't know that the libraries do a good enough job at letting people know that it exists.
Yes.
Because that's a fantastic resource.
Mhm.
And I've had people approach me to say, well, how can I find out about all the companies located in Cleveland that I want to,
Mhm.
and I would refer them actually to the library, because it's a great resource for that sort of thing.
It is.
Very few, and a lot of people don't know about it.
Yeah, we've worked with Anita Stalker, Community and Economic Development. We've done presentations to businesses. We belong to every Chamber of Commerce and talk about them. We show them when we go to the Chamber of Commerce meetings. We have a blurb and lines and links. But you know what happens? You don't really know until you need it, you know, what's out there. So doing this at this meeting means maybe it'll appear in a newspaper, and that'll help us
Well,
too.
it may. I think a picture was taken, so who knows? So, no, I appreciate you coming, and I don't know if there's any more questions, but I think it's a given that we'll be working together.
Okay.
You know,
So is the ball in your court or is the ball in my court? Because last year I asked the same question, and the commissioners at that time said, we'll be in touch with you, we'll work on this year. I can be aggressive if you want me to.
Be aggressive. Be
Okay,
aggressive.
I'll do that, because we need to get somebody reappointed to our board. I don't want to go bare.
I understand. No,
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
so much. Thank you, appreciate you coming by, taking the time.
Thanks, Mr. Claypool.
Where's your office located?
I'm on
Which line?
12701 Ravenwood, right at the corner of Ravenwood and Merritt. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, good seeing you.
Good to see you again. I can do that, Blake, I'm a super librarian. My day, thank you. Thanks, Christie.
You're gonna let me peek into that artifact special room you got there?
I don't know. We'll see how the discussion goes, how's that?
Okay. So, I don't think we have any more agenda items? Okay. So, meetings coming up, the offices will be closed the 3rd in observance of 4th of July. We're gonna hold a regular session on the 7th. There is a Geauga County Township Association dinner on the 8th, Board of Revision meeting on the 13th. Commissioners' regular session on the 14th, Juvenile Detention Center on the 14th, Planning Commission meeting at 7 o'clock on the 14th, Board of Revision on the 20th, Family First Council on the 20th, the Commissioners on the 21st, regular session, 23rd, and 28th. And for anybody who has, since you're here, you might have an interest in the Board of Revision meeting we had yesterday. We have a haunted house in Geauga County. There was a whole story about a film that was taken in this haunted house. It was absolutely fascinating to hear the update in that Board of Revision meeting. So, haunted houses all over Geauga County, very interesting. So.
Does that make them more valuable or less valuable?
You know, interesting, well, we had, people wouldn't go in it because it was haunted, so they had to be an exorcism.
Oh.
Very interesting story that somebody might be interested in.
But it was, we had a Board of Revision, I don't recall anything ever coming to a Board of Revision asking that the value of the property be increased.
And by the way, these are very interesting meetings, some of what we do. Blake last week had to hear about snakes and attics, and so some of the interesting things. Big snakes.
They were big snakes. They had the skins, and they had them stretched out, 3 of them on the floor. They were all over 5 feet long.
Yeah, so anyway, I thought you'd be interested in the ghost tale as we depart, so can we have a...
I'd move to adjourn.
Very good, thanks.
Thank you for
Thank you all
coming.
for coming.